So good morning, my name is Daniel Espinoza, and I am an independent consultant. I have an agency called Grow Development where I do WooCommerce, customizations, integrations, plugins. I also have a plugin shop called Shop Plugins where I sell commercial extensions as well. I've worked with WooCommerce forever since it was started back in 2011. Worked for WooThemes for about a little bit over a year, around 2013, 2014. As a support ninja and a development guy. So I built a couple of their plugins. So I love the platform. I love working with it. I love the community. I was the annoying guy on Twitter doing all the selfies with everybody. So just because I love coming to the conference because there's so many friends that converge and I get to say hi and just talk with them and give them a hug around the neck and really be annoying. So today is a workshop. So that means that we're gonna do the work. You know, just like Rihanna says, you gotta work. Okay, whatever. So we're going to talk about the Restful API, and then we're going to do some actual stuff with the Restful API, okay? So who has used the WooCommerce API before? Okay, cool. So the rest of you guys, we're going to bring everybody up to speed so that when we leave here, you will know what it is, how to use it, and then what kind of stuff you can dream up to use it for. But first things first. So quick history of the WooCommerce API. WooCommerce, as I said, was created in 2011, but the API didn't come around until 2013 in pull request 4055 by Max Rice from Skyverge. So it was shipped out in version 2.1 of WooCommerce, Peppy Penguin, and at the beginning there, it had only 5 endpoints. And if you don't know what endpoint is, we're going to talk about that in just a second. And it was read only, which means you couldn't update anything in WooCommerce. You can only pull data out. And it had JSON data and XML data. So some of those things changed since then. And the 5 endpoints were coupons, customers, orders, products, and reports. The current version that we're at today is version 3.1 of the API. It has full read-write access to all of the data that's available in WooCommerce. It only has JSON. It dropped the XML component back in version 2. And it has some new things that got delivered were the ability to do bulk updates, bulk creation of data, which is really helpful instead of having to throw one item at a time for updates. And then it also does some auto generation of passwords for customers if you're going to be authenticating or creating customers via the API. Okay, so for the folks who haven't worked with the REST API before, we're going to sort of bring you up to speed. What is REST API? So when we say WC REST API, it's just one giant acronym, so we don't have to walk around saying WooCommerce Representational State Transfer Application Programming Interface. Gotcha? Okay. So that's the WC REST API. The REST API allows data to be created and retrieved and then updated inside of WooCommerce from outside systems. And this is really helpful in a lot of different ways because you don't have to go through the front end. You don't have to go through some weird database access. It's a very useful way to access all your e-commerce data. A couple of terms that we're going to go over we'll be using during the presentation. You'll be seeing when you talk about the REST API client server. Any REST API is going to involve a client and a server, the server being the WooCommerce e-commerce store that you're running on, and the client is anything accessing that store. It could be another system. It could be a client running in your browser, which we're probably going to do today. It could be anything else. I think Bryce's presentation did he use the API in his presentation, Jonah? So his setup there was using a drone. Not sure where that would be in this place, but so client server, stateless. Each request has enough context to fulfill that one request. The server and the client don't have to remember between requests that this client is authorized to access certain data. It has all authorization information in it. It has all requests, endpoints, and routes in that one request. So it can get the request, fulfill the request, and then it's complete. A resource is a discrete entity in WooCommerce, and normally these have the names of the things that you're trying to access. So orders, you're going to see orders in the URI string. You're going to see products. You're going to see coupons. Anything that you want to gain access to in WooCommerce, that's going to be usually included in the name, so it's self-documenting in that way. Example down here, get WC API v3 orders 999. 999 is the ID, orders is the resource you're looking for. v3 is the version of the API you're using. You always want to use the updated one, but if you maybe use an older one that's been deprecated, you want to make sure that you're using the correct version string. Routes versus endpoints. So the route is the name of whatever you're accessing in WooCommerce, and then the endpoint is the actual function that you're running against that endpoint. So if we have a route that says orders and the endpoint is get, that just means the verb is you're getting data from that endpoint. If you're posting data, that means that you're adding or creating an item in WooCommerce, and then deleting is deleting that item in WooCommerce. So there's these endpoints or the verbs or the functions that you're running against the API. So as I said earlier, the first version of the API launched with five available endpoints or routes, and these are all of the routes that are available in WooCommerce currently. I think the coverage is near complete of all of the data in WooCommerce that's available, and so they've started working, like I said, about making things more useful with the bulk edition and with the user credentialing. The schema, when you talk about a schema, that's the definition of the data that you're going to be receiving from WooCommerce. So that's your roadmap of when I send this request, what am I expecting to get back? The schema will define all of the entities that all the data that you're going to be receiving back, plus their data types, and then anything else about the API that you need to know. And the schema for the WooCommerce API can be found at your store, whatever your URL is, /wc-api/ and then the version number of the API, so /v3. So when you access that, here's an example of WooThemes.com is running WooCommerce. So it has the schema printed out here. It's not really easy to look at, but this is JSON, so you can pull that out and put it into an editor that understands it and puts it into more of a format that's easier to read. Cool. So you have all this great data accessible out on the open web, and it's your store data, so it's kind of private, and you want to keep it secure. So how is this stuff kept secure? So using requests over HTTP, the WooCommerce REST API uses OAuth 1.0.a to authenticate against it. And then if you're going over HTTPS, then it does a basic authentication with the credentials that you're provided when you create an account in WooCommerce, which is something we'll do this morning. The account consists of the consumer key and the consumer secret. So what are some ways that the REST API can be used out in the real world? So some of the ways that the REST API can be used are if you have an external system, say you're running a e-commerce shop. An example that I have is a client of mine sells battery chargers. So there's those portable battery chargers that you buy, put in your car, put in your boat, your RV, so that the battery dies, you hook it up, and it charges it up. So they sell these, but they have multiple outlets where they sell them out. So WooCommerce is only one. So the mothership that runs the inventory is actually an external system, but WooCommerce needs to know on a nightly basis how many products it has on hand, so it doesn't oversell a certain unit. So we set up a system that would connect via the API nightly, go through all of their available SKUs. There are only about 100, and then update the inventory on each of those SKUs. So the WooCommerce is always cognizant of what inventory is on hand, so it didn't get in trouble of overselling. Adding shipment fulfillment data. Another integration that I built was a company uses a third-party shipment fulfilling system. So the orders go out to them, and then once that company picks the items, packs the orders, ships them on their way, gets a tracking number from UPS, FedEx, or USPS, they send a request back through the API that updates the order with the shipment tracking number. That tracking number gets emailed to the customers and says, hey, your stuff's on your way, click here to track it. WooCommerce iOS app. If any of you use the iOS app that was built on WooCommerce, that is using the REST API to access data on your store so that it can report it to the native iOS app. And then fully decoupled e-commerce. So if you want to build a store out of whatever language du jour or language that you're familiar with, you can do that with the REST API. You can request all full product data. You can request URLs to thumbnail images. You can request, you can create orders, create customers. Anything you can do in WooCommerce on the site, you can do via the API. Asterisk, almost anything. I don't want to say blanket statements. But you could build a whole system to do your e-commerce and then use WooCommerce or WordPress and WooCommerce just as the back end. So really cool stuff. I don't have a good example of that. I'm looking for one so I can reference to. Do you have one?
Not a fully decoupled one.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Rails app that is subscription-based,
Mm-hmm.
and we're creating the subscriptions over in
Nice.
WooCommerce with a subscription plugin.
Okay, so he's doing subscriptions on that other app and then creating orders via that. So another plugin that me and the man in the back with the camera are talking about is doing a sort of joint venture or a joint promotion with another store. This store sells one of their subscriptions or one of their memberships, and as a line item it says, hey, buy our membership and you'll get access to this other site, poststatus.com. And then so when this order is created, we're going to go through the API, create another order over here so the customer immediately gets 2 memberships for the price of 1. So decoupled e-commerce is something that's going to be really cool. Okay, so we have the API, we have access to it, we know that all this data is there. How are we going to interact with the API? So there are a couple of different ways that you can interact with it. You can use an app. So this morning we're going to be downloading and using the Cocoa REST client, which is a free plugin. There's another app that's available that is like $50, but we're going with this one because this one works really well. There are browser plugins for Chrome or Firefox. I don't know of a Windows-based app for this, so if you're on a Windows machine, you'll need to use one of the browser plugins. And then there are wrapper libraries available for Node, for PHP, for Python, for Ruby. And then I'll have a link that I'm going to give you all in just a moment for that. So this is the Cocoa REST client that we're going to be using for some of our walkthroughs today. Okay, so links for everything are at github/growdev/WooConf. So there's a README there that's going to have a bunch of resources at the bottom, and then it's going to have our coding examples that we're going to walk through today. And then at the top there's a tools section, and that has a link to the Cocoa app, and it has a link to the client libraries. So if you're new to the WooCommerce REST API, I suggest using either the Cocoa app or the Chrome plugin, and go ahead and start downloading that and getting it installed now. If you have experience with the APIs and you want to try some of the wrapper libraries, there's links there as well to choose either the PHP wrapper library or Node or Python, Ruby, whatever you want to try out. Download those and then start to get that loaded. So overall, we have an hour and a half together. This basis has been 20 minutes. We're going to spend the rest of the time going through several exercises to get you guys up to speed. So first, any questions on the history, what a REST API is, WooCommerce, anything like that? Any questions? Everybody's downloading. I love the sound of downloading. It's a sound that I wish my kids would do more often, silence. Brian?
What's the relationship with the WooCommerce API to the official infrastructure of REST APIs?
Damn you. The WooCommerce API is independent, and there might be a relationship, but the WordPress REST API that has part of its pieces already in core and the rest of it in an external plugin, WooCommerce does not rely on that to operate its API. So they're independent. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. So next steps, because I want to get you through all of these before we're done. Next steps are going to be, since you're all administrators on the site, in WooCommerce, we were going to go to the WooCommerce menu option, WooCommerce settings, and then if you're familiar with WooCommerce, it has a bunch of tabs along the top of the settings page. The very last one says API. click on that, and there's 3 options. The first option is just to enable the API, and that's checked off and turned on for all the sites that we're going to be working with. The next one is to allow to define keys for the site. Now, this is a bit tricky of an interface. So when you click on that tab, it's going to give you 3 options. One is a description of the keys. The second is the user that you're allowing this access to. And then the third is escaping my mind, but you can leave it blank. You can leave it as a default setting. You hit create keys, and it creates them for that user. So you'll just find your username under there, and then hit it under the description. Just put your name, and then once you create it, you're gonna get 2 fields and a QR code. The 2 fields are your consumer key and your consumer secret. Copy those out of there into a text file on your machine, because once you hit OK or you leave that page, you won't be able to access them again. You'll have to recreate another set of keys. Okay. As I said, if you go to WooCommerce and Settings, we have all the tabs, Settings tabs at the top. The one at the very end is for API. Here's that first subsection that just says turn on the API, make it accessible. If you don't need the API on the site, you can go ahead and turn it off. The next subsection is Keys Apps. And Doug and Timon have already created their keys, but for everybody else, if you want to add a key, add a description, test, add a user. I'll use my own. Oh yeah, and then the permissions. Go ahead and set read write for everybody, because we're going to need both. Hit generate key, and then here's where you get your consumer key and secret. Copy those off to somewhere you can access them later, and then ignore the QR code. And then if I reload this page, then you see how if I go to the keys and click on my guy, and we've all just started accessing the server again, haven't we? If I click on it again, I'm not going to be able to access them. So just remember to copy and paste them out. Okay, who has their keys and who's working on them? Who has your keys? Most of us. Who's working on their keys? Okay, we'll give you a couple minutes and access them. As you guys are wrapping that up, exercise 1 is in the repo README. So exercise 1 for you guys is to get access to your store. So for those of you who downloaded Cocoa, you're going to download Cocoa and use those credentials to just do a very basic get on your store. So here's Cocoa, and I was doing some testing and stuff. The first thing you'll need to do for your authentication is when it opens up, you have these tabs here at the top. Click on off, and then you'll see username and password. Username is going to be your consumer key. Password is going to be your consumer secret. And then you can leave preemptive basic auth unchecked. So all of these sites are on HTTPS. So since you're connecting via HTTPS, it's just going to use the basic authentication, which is just that key, a colon, the secret, and then that's all, I think, base 64 encoded. It's really simple. And that's going to be sent along to authenticate you to the site.
Can you help just raise your hand?
This is the key. Yeah, okay, yeah. It says username and password. Right.
It's confusing. So we're going to get here. And then the URL up at the top is going to be the full URL of the site. So growdevelopment.net/ y'all's are going to be woo 1 through 5. And then WC-API is the endpoint. And then don't remember, every request has to have the appropriate version string. So WC-API/v3 is what we're hitting. We're hitting the most recent version. And then it's going to be what you're after. So at this point, for this one, we're going to do products. And then if y'all remember, the endpoint that we want to hit, or the function, is going to be get. So for this exercise, use the URL for products and then just get. If we just do the with no ID, it'll pull all. Yeah, and so mine's running. When you see it running, it'll show red here at the bottom. So mine's still trying to reach. Internet's down again. Cool. Everybody rolling, got some products. So what you're seeing in the response is a JSON list of about 21 products that are loaded to the site right now. I just loaded in. WooCommerce gets shipped with some dummy data in the plugin directory, and I just loaded those in there. So you're seeing 21 products like a Woo T-shirt, Woo Ninja shirt, some records. What's your URL request?
Woo4. Is that the first related IDs for the products?
So that's the first part of one product,
Okay.
and then you'll see a bunch of others after that.
All right. Okay.
Cool. So you guys have successfully authenticated to and requested data from the WooCommerce API. That's the first step. Awesome. Okay, so we created API credentials through the WooCommerce WordPress dashboard, and then we did a simple get on products with the endpoint products, and if you just do products / you'll get everything. If you do products plus an ID, then you'll get that one specific ID. On the GitHub repo, where it has the lists of all of the test sites, there's a list of product IDs under there, and that's just the post ID. So if you request the post ID, you'll get specifically one product. Cool. Okay, exercise 2.
Turns out it's not a 1.0a header, but an HTTP basic.
Okay, brilliant. Exercise 2. In this exercise, you will update a product. So everybody in your little groups of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just powwow amongst yourselves, choose a separate product. And what I want you to do is we're going to log into the back end. You're going to change the verb to put, which means you're uploading data there. You're going to change your endpoint to products / the ID of the product that you selected. And then here's where it gets a little bit tricky. We're gonna put together a JSON request that's going to be sent up to the server to change the data that you want to change. Okay? So I'm going to show you an example real quick. On the GitHub repo, there is a link to woothemes.github.io, which is the API documentation. And this is going to be your friend if you're doing anything with the REST API. They've done a really good job of documenting each of the pieces that are available to you. So in this exercise, we're going to be updating a product. So you look on the left-hand side here of the let's make this bigger. Okay, on the left-hand side lists all of the available data. And we're just going to scroll down until we see products. You click on products, it gives you a nice description in the middle of what you're accessing, and then the action that we're doing is create a product, or excuse me, update a product. It shows you the verb that you need to use, and then the endpoint that you need to use, and then over on the right it has options of showing what data you're going to use to update. So what I did is I grabbed the JSON response for changing the title, and then I crafted this. So the JSON that you're going to put in Cocoa is going to be this specifically. You're going to say product, and then I want to change the title to Daniel Test. Okay, simple as that. You want to change the inventory, you change inventory. You want to change the SKU, you use SKU. That API reference shows you all of the different fields that are available that are defined for that product. So then in Cocoa, make sure and change the top to get over on there, and then you're just going to type this in there for under body. Click raw input. Sorry, yes, put. Thank you. You guys are paying attention. And that's it. So try this out. Hit submit. You'll get a response here at the bottom. which should be okay, or your response should be the full product after it's been changed. And the API documentation shows you what a sample response should look like. So we're going to go ahead and change the title of a product to something, to your name or to something unique. Execute it, and then let us know if you have any questions. Because we're a little short in time, and I want to make sure we have time to do the last one. Exercise 3 is create. So you've pulled data out, so you can pull products. You might be pulling orders to send to your fulfillment company. You've updated stuff back. This is the updating of SKUs, or excuse me, updating of inventory that I was talking about earlier, because maybe your inventory is managed in a separate system. Now we're going to create. So in this example, we're going to use the orders route, and we're going to create an order for yourself. So that product ID that you used, you're going to use that product ID and your customer ID to create an order for yourself. And I'll show you an example. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to the GitHub so y'all can, if you want to create it on yourself by yourself, go for it. If not, I'm going to add this to the bottom of the README. Okay, so this code block right here is what you'll want to use, but I'm going to explain it real quick. So this is, if we go back to our handy-dandy REST API docs, what we're wanting to create is an order. So we would find the order option here, and then find the option to create an order, which is the second one down. It tells us we're going to be using post, and then the orders route here. And then over here is a PHP example of an order to create. There's certain fields that you need to define to create the order. If it's a new user, you would have to create, or excuse me, a new customer, you'd have to define all of the attributes that are assigned to that customer. But since you guys are already defined users, we're just going to use your user ID. Does everybody know how to find a user ID in the WordPress dashboard? You would go to the users, find yourself, hover over it, and you can see your ID there. Yes, and then the billing and shipping addresses are there. Customer ID is an option, and then the line items. We're just going to add one, and the line items consist of the product ID, which is the ID that you guys customized, and then the quantity. You can order as many as you'd like. So in the example that I put into GitHub, we have customer ID, which is going to be your ID. We have payment details, which you can leave the same. Right now, we're just going to use the transfer, the direct bank transfer payment gateway. Fill out the billing address and the shipping address. Those are pretty self-explanatory. And then the array of line items. We're only adding one, and the product ID is going to be your personalized product, and the quantity is going to be however many of those you want. Use that as the raw input to Cocoa. And remember to change it to put and the endpoint to orders, and then see what you can do. You should create, it should create an order in WooCommerce. You should get a order placed email back to your email address. But let's roll through it and ask if you have any questions. So now that you guys are all certified experts in the WooCommerce REST API, y'all are awesome. Yeah, I don't have any badges, dang it. So here's some resources, and these resources are available on that GitHub README. I'm Daniel. Hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions. If y'all are doing some projects and take this and do something really awesome, I'd really love to hear about it, because I like using it as examples to inspire the next group. And then that's, if you want to know more about me, I'm at daniel.gd/now is my now page. And then, yeah, so thank you guys. We're going to have another session at 11 for the theme group. So we're going to swap people. And then, yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.